Hello YouTube and welcome to Old Maryland 63 C10. This is episode 16 in our build process, and in this episode we are going to strip the cab down, get all the pieces out of it, and assess what we need to do for repairs. The last video I finished up at least getting the frame back together and on four wheels, so now it's time to move on to the cab. So that's what we're going to do in this episode. So the first thing we're going to do is get some things out of the cab, the seat. I got the steering column stashed in there. I got some other things stashed in there that, again, are already unbolted or taken apart. I just need to get them out. So let's get that going, and then we will start taking some things off this cab and get looking at what we need to fix. And I think I want to start from the front of the cab and the firewall and work back. A couple small things, brake master, get some of the firewall stuff cleaned up real quick, but I'm really interested in getting my windshield out. So I'm kind of anxious to see what's behind there. I'll show you on the inside as we go through the video. There's a little bit of pitting in the top right here, and I'm worried about what that's going to look like. So I really am anxious to get the windshield out. The cowl here sticks up on this side a little bit, so I'm wondering if the tab in here is broken, so I want to get that off. So let's just get started with getting some of this off, and then I'll show you how I'm going to attempt to get the windshield out. Okay, so I got those couple things off. The windshield wipers, they gave me a little bit of tough time getting those off, but they're off. This is what I was talking about with my cowl panel. I'm not sure if the camera picks it up, but this corner wants to sit up high. But when I took the cowl off, I was thinking this clip right here might be missing. But I don't know if it just needs to get bent down a little bit, or if this whole panel might have gotten twisted somehow. So that'll be something we look at when we go to put everything back together. And the next thing I'm going to do is try to get this windshield out. Now it's already cracked, so it doesn't matter if I mess it up too bad. But again, I want to practice because my parts truck has a good windshield in it. So I've got a sharp utility knife with a fresh blade, and so I'm hoping I'll be able to cut this outer seal and the window will come out. And again, I don't want to necessarily beat it out, even though I don't need this one, but essentially practice for taking the one out of my parts truck, which I'd like to use that original GM windshield. So let's see what we can do. Okay, so we cut the outer part of the seal off. So, oh, look at that. Boy, if my other one comes out that easy, I'll be lucky. So I want to see if I can get the rest of this out, because this is where it's going to give us some answers. There's just that little indent here, I guess, where the seams meet. So this, very fortunately, looks pretty good. Which is really what I was worried about. Okay, so this is the outside around the top. This is just where the seam doesn't line up from where they join these two, and I've heard people joke these are basically tractors with cabs on them, and you can kind of see why this is a good probably 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch where this seam doesn't quite match up here. But overall, the top outside does not appear to have anything besides some surface rust on it. No holes going through, which is what I was really worried about, because that's where a lot of these cabs just go. And even over in this corner, now in this case, the seams line up pretty good. And it looks like down in here, it's mostly just dirt. I'll see if I can get a better light on that and give you a better shot, and then I'll jump into cab. Now that the glass is out of the truck, and I took the back window out the same way, just used a razor knife to go around the very brittle seal and pop the back glass out. So the glass is out, so we're going to start working on the passenger side of the truck, getting the rest of the inside out, and move over to the driver's side. So the first thing we're going to do is knock this vent out, and this is pretty crusty in here. The outside cowl part, I guess the vent part, is fortunately not rusted through. So let's see what we get when we pull this out. Hopefully I don't get too much in the way of the camera. It's a little cramped in here. My drop license in here, but hopefully we'll be able to get this working. Okay, so I brought the camera around so that you can see the next part, which will be getting I think this is the deluxe heater model they called it. And I got to break a couple screws here loose that are holding the control cables. I already pulled the one, oops, sorry about that. I already pulled the one out from the firewall, and this one just comes out of this clamp. So the other thing I want to pay attention to as I'm taking this apart is the heater will come out pretty easily, hopefully. But I want to pay attention that the engine harness runs behind the heater, up behind this one vent, and then across, and it looks like it goes, maybe it doesn't go over the windshield wiper motor, but it runs pretty close. So I just want to pay attention to that so I can get this, when I go put it back together, even though I'm rewiring it, hopefully it'll all go back in the same place. So let's start getting the cables off, and then I think it's just a couple screws right there. So it looks like the plug for the heater that's in the camera is actually behind it. So I have to try to remember that. Okay, so we'll go ahead and pull the controls out. Obviously these are all broken. I got to get new levers. Looks like it's just one screw that's kind of holding it in there. So we'll go ahead and take that out. All right, the last thing to do is to take off the padding that's in here, and I'm just going to go outside and clip these rubber, whatever you want to call these things, off from the outside, and they should just pop right off, but it'll be easier than just trying to pull them through. Okay, let's move on to the driver's side and start taking the rest of the dash apart. Next up is removing the gauge cluster. So I took out the windshield wiper motor, ashtray, and this truck actually has the block-off plate, the original block-off plate for the radio deletes. That's kind of cool. So I took that out. So now we're moving over to this part of the dash. We'll get this out so we can see behind and start unhooking wires. I did continue to label wires again, even though I'm doing a new harness, just so I'm marking stuff where they're going as we work our way across. So let's go ahead and get the gauge cluster out. Now, I guess one thing about this gauge cluster, I'm not going to actually use this one because my parts truck had a full mechanical gauge and not just the idiot lights. It's got a crack in the glass, but other than that, I think it would be fine. I mean, I'm guessing, but anyway, I'm not going to be using this one, but just want to be careful on how everything comes apart. Okay, so I think we're switching to plan B, and I'm actually going to work the opposite way up. I think all the little tin clips where the screws go in for the cluster are catching the back lip of the cluster itself. And it's almost impossible to get to them all with the pedal assembly and all those kind of things in the way. So let's switch gears. We'll go ahead and take the pedal assembly out, disconnect and label some more wires, and get back at it. Okay guys, I have to apologize. I had an issue with my camera. I'm running out of data on my phone because I'm doing all this on my phone. So the video I did of taking the bottom of the pedals and everything out, actually the camera wasn't recording. So we are here taking the cluster back out, and I will say this thing gave me a fit. Every one of these little tabs that's actually holding it in kind of interfere with it coming out. So I had to get up there with a screwdriver and pry gently, of course, around the perimeter of the dash to tuck these. When I get it out, I can show you a little better, but I had to tuck the ears in a little bit to be able to get this cluster out. So let me pull off all these wires and hopefully get this thing completely out. So there's our cluster. Hey everybody, I've had kind of a rough day with my phone. So as far as recording the videos, every time I went to start a video, I'd get a little bit into what I was taking apart. Then I get a message that I was out of data. So I would delete a little bit, then run a little bit, and I just ended up having a tough time recording a lot of the information. So apologize up front, this video is kind of choppy. Hopefully you're still getting something out of the videos and you'll still want to like and subscribe, but the cab is all apart. So let me show you the parts I got off of it and then some of the repairs we need to make to the cab. So here's all the things out of the cab. This is the brackets and springs for the factory jack that's obviously no longer in the truck. And then I got the old bushings from an earlier video. Windshield wiper motor, bolts, of course the steering column that I took out in an earlier video. Some things that I'm not going to use, the master cylinder, we're getting rid of that. I got a 2-pot master cylinder. Switches, I think these switches work with the exception of the windshield wiper switch that broke, but I think the American Auto Wire kit I bought has all the switches in it, so we'll go back with their switches. Windshield wipers, one cool thing this truck still had was the radio delete plate. That was still in there, so I got that. Of course, the ashtray, windshield wiper arms, gas pedal linkage. And then this was in the top of the dash and it wasn't hooked up to anything. I don't know if anybody recognizes this. It looks, obviously it's a bracket for something, but it wasn't attached. So maybe leave a comment below if you know what that goes to. Of course, the vents that I'll clean up and rebuild. Emergency brake, bracket that holds the steering column on, gas pedal over there, and then the clutch and brake pedal assembly, the dome light, which actually works, but I'll get a new one of these, and then all of the things for the heater, including the front panel, which I need to obviously buy new levers for and knobs because they're all broken off, and then of course the gauge cluster and wiring. So not going to use any of that stuff. Got, again, the American Auto Wire wiring kit to go in, and I got a gauge cluster with mechanical gauges. So that's everything that came out of the cab. It looks like it's going to be a lot of cleaning up and painting to do before everything goes back together, but you know, that's several steps down the road. So let's take a look at the inside of the cab. Okay, so starting on the driver's side of the cab, or actually in the center, let's say we'll start in the center. 4-speed shifter, the granny gear shifter hole, we'll weld that up and close that because we obviously won't be using that. And this part of the floor is probably the worst part. You can see the place right there in the kick panel. The rest of this is pretty crusty, but it's solid. I can bang on it with a pointy screwdriver and it won't go through. So this part right here is probably the worst, and then this spot right here. There's a little bit on the curve where it transitions up to the seat, but that's the worst of it on this side. these little holes where the brackets used to be for the jack and all that, we're just going to weld those closed because we're not going, you know, back with any of those parts. And then moving to the outside of the cab, this rocker, with the exception of this top lip here, is in really good shape. So we got the rust spot here, rust here, rust here. The outer rocker though, really only has this one little pinhole right here. The rest of the rocker is all really in good shape. So we'll get around to the other side and kind of talk about the plan for that. We got a dent here. I might try to straighten that out and just weld that hole closed, but we'll see when we start kind of knocking around a little bit on that. And then, of course, the cab corner. Now this cab corner is not too bad, but looking at it from the inside, there's a lot of rust in there, so we'll probably end up getting a cab corner for this side too, even though we only really need that little bottom piece. So let's go around the other side and take a look over there. Okay, so on the passenger side, this part of the floor up all through the kick panel is in really good shape. I do have a hole down there. It's not quite into the side panel, but it's hard to tell exactly until it really starts getting cleaned up. Otherwise, the floor on this side is in really good shape. We're not going to be touching anything over here. We'll go look at this cab corner in a second, but you know, this floor is in great shape. I should mention, I will probably cut off these brackets like right across here or something like this to get this out of the truck. We're not going to put the tank back in the truck. And I still have the grommet in there from where the gas line goes through. We'll probably take that out and weld that closed, because since we're not going to put the tank back here. So we might just get these cut, leave them bolted, and of course riveted, leave them in there, because I mean the cab mount comes through there. So, and I should have showed you on the other side, but the inside of the cowl panel is in really good shape. This one has one little tiny pinhole in it. The other one's fine. So we'll address that. Now, when you get to the outside of this, again, I've said in the very first video, this truck is definitely a tale of two sides. This top lip is perfect. There's nothing really wrong with that. But this rocker here is really shot here in the center. But the corners are in great shape. And this corner up here, it just has a little bit of a problem right here. Bottom solid, top solid, everything else is in great shape. So, but the middle is rotten all through here. And then when we move it back around to the back, this is the cab corner that's obviously in really bad shape. So we'll order a cab corner for this side and get this all patched up here. Okay, so that's going to wrap this video up. Again, I apologize. It's kind of disjointed and blocky at times. And again, I'm sorry I couldn't show all the pieces I was taking out, but I just kept having issues with my camera. One thing to note is I'm going to try for the floor to cut patches out of my parts truck. That's one of the reasons why I got it, because some of the areas that need to be replaced on Hank are still in pretty decent shape on my parts truck. So I'm going to try to cut a lot of the floor out of that. I'm also, you know, people may disagree with me on this, but I might only order one rocker panel and use the top lip of it for the driver's side and use the bottom for the passenger side instead of getting two, because I want to replace as little metal as I can. I want to clean everything up, but my skill set isn't that great. I'm learning as I go. I don't want to chop out big pieces of this if I don't have to. And then of course we're going to order the cab corner. The other thing is, I'm just like with the frame, I'm going to explore the idea of having the inside media blasted and taking everything down to the bare metal. Because some of the places, especially on the driver's side, it's really pitted, but it's still solid. So I think I might look to get everything blasted down to bare metal so I'm not welding through rust and I'm not leaving rust in there along with my patches. So in the next video, we'll probably start doing some work on the cab, or at least report out if I'm going to have it blasted. So that's next. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Old Maryland 63 C10.